This photo bounced into my social media ages and ages and ages ago. At just the wrong time, because I was in the middle of a bunch of research and for some masochistic reason had decided that I wasn't going to make anything until that research project was done. But I did save the photo into a file, which is normally where good ideas go to die, but I just couldn't forget this one. I mean, look at this thing. It's all sorts of things that I just love, all wrapped up into one object. It's a secret compartment and heaps of fiddly little drawers and a great skelly on the inside cover and a beautiful leather binding and a medieval book with book clasps. I mean, it's just fantastic. It just kind of just lodged into my brain. And in fact, I've already had 2 goes at this project, but each time I ran into a roadblock and just got frustrated and shoved the thing aside. But I think I'm finally ready to properly tackle it. Back when this was making the rounds, it was being called a poisoner's cabinet, and a whole bunch of people jumped in immediately and called it a fraud or a fake. Which, kind of yes, but also kind of no, and kind of debunking like that it's not just a buzzkill, it's such a shame because looking at why it's not a 17th century poisoner's cabinet brings up all these really fun and interesting things. So here are 6 of them. It's really the wrong kind of secret compartment. There are heaps of hidden places and cubbies and things like that at the time, but not like this. I'll put a link to this box in the Victoria and Albert collection down in the description. But also, if you're looking for fun distraction, you should Google Augsberg cabinets because they're amazing. It's also kind of terrible at being a secret at all. I mean, poisoning people was a really dangerous thing to do. I mean, unless you were doing it on the behalf of somebody in authority, in which case you didn't need to keep it a secret. So, I mean, yeah, this is hidden inside a book, but the moment you open the cover, it's totally obvious what's going on. There's also the fact that I could not find a single reliably dated example of something like this, of a book being used as a hiding place. If anybody knows of one, please let me know in the comments because I would be super excited to find out about it. I also think it's kind of hinky that it would have survived at all, especially with all of the labels and things on it. I mean, this is a kind of family heirloom that could have gotten you into some serious trouble. So even if you wanted to keep it as a hidey hole, I think you would have gotten rid of all the poison references. And then it just looks wrong in a lot of different ways. But I did learn something new from 2 of them. One of them is that handwriting in Germany for hundreds of years was completely different to anywhere else in Europe. And then the other one was a really fun dive into the history of marbled paper, the gist of which is I don't think it would have been used in this way. It would have been used as end paper, but almost certainly not on the sides of the drawers. The last reason is the best one, because I found 5 other gorgeous books. I'm not going to have time to look closely at them in this video, but I'm definitely going to do it in the next one. But in spite of all that, I still don't think this is a fraud or a fake, because I don't think that the maker was actually trying to fool anybody. I think this is a piece of 19th century folk art that was mashing up all kinds of stuff from the 16th and 17th century. In that period, it was really fashionable to make a Kunstkammer, a cabinet of curiosities. So you take a cabinet, or sometimes in a whole room, and just stuff it full of all kinds of weird and wonderful things, like scientific stuff and exotica and art and artifacts. It was a way of showing off how educated and cultured you were. The maker took that idea and then mashed it up with something much, much older, the idea of the memento mori, a thing that's supposed to make you stop and think about human mortality. It's so brilliant. It's playing around with the past and telling new stories about it. It's kind of like cosplay, but for objects. And the best thing about it is that it feels like an invitation to join in and play along too. mentioned earlier that I've already had 2 goes at this project, and I would love to talk about those failures because I think it's important to talk about failure, and because that's part of the story of this project, and because it kind of explains what I'm doing now. The problem is that I don't actually have any images to speak of either of those goes, and just talking without anything to look at just sounds dire. So I'm not going to really go into any detail. I just want to talk about the 2 problems that came up because those are the problems that I need to solve before I can go forward. To make a book safe, you paint the outside of the pages with glue, and that turns them into sort of a solid block, so they're a lot easier to manage and it's a lot easier to get a good cut. The problem is it also makes them look kind of shiny and feel real plasticky, and I really don't like that. I wanted to avoid it. And I figured maybe I could just do it without the glue, like this little book that I have. It might be hard to see in the pictures, but the pages are nice and soft and pliable. They look totally ordinary, and that's what I wanted to do. So I thought I would just give it a go without the glue and see what happened. And what happened was that without that extra control from the glue holding them in place, it was almost impossible to get a really good clean cut. So that's the first problem. The second problem came up when I modelled a cabinet based on the original inspiration book, but sized down to fit the book that I had, and when I put it together, it was adorable, it was really cute, but the drawers were super tiddly, and it was almost impossible to find meaningful things that would fit inside them and tell a coherent story. So I have to resolve those 2 issues before I can really go any further with this thing. But I think I have an idea of what I can do, at least for the first one. Is this overkill, over-engineered, and still possibly ineffective for what I want it to do? Yep. But I'm going to try it anyway. The pressure from the clamp broke the book spine and pushed the pages forward. It gives it this really weird shape, which is not great. And it's still a little bit rough on the inside, but I think I have an idea on how I might be able to fix that. I ended up doing 4 thin coats of plaster and let it dry really thoroughly in between, and then filed it down with a rough file and then did some sanding. It's still not square and it's still not completely smooth, but I think that it's good enough that I can actually fit a cabinet in there, which is, it's actually really encouraging. The second problem is much more of a pickle. At this point, I just want to understand the scale of it, and I can't do that in my brain. I literally need to see it in 3D. So I'm going to take these photos and do some jiggery-pokery in Photoshop and Illustrator and see if I can't just figure out what the original dimensions actually are, so that I can mock up a full-scale version of this cabinet. I originally intended to just do the cabinet carcass, but I couldn't resist making the drawers as well. This is a terrible place to end, I know. I have a book without a cabinet and a cabinet without a book. I have a heap of ideas and no plan. So that's what's going to happen next time. I want to go back and look at those 6 books again. Partly because they're just so cool. But I also want to just get a better feel for what the maker was doing and maybe try to understand a little bit more about why. And I want to start a deep dive into the history of poison and the artifacts and the culture around it. Poison is going to be part of this project somehow, and I think I just need to understand it better so I know what kind of story I want to tell about it. And then I need to make a plan. And how hard can that be? I hope you're up for it. See you later.